Uh, we are in the midst of a massive energy transition of the kind that happens perhaps once in 50 years or even once in 100 years. And we are in the middle of living through it right now. So what is this energy transition that is happening, and why is it so important for us to have this energy transition? The first thing is taking a step back. Our electricity sector was created over the course of inventions and technology development that happened about 100 years ago. And ever since then, we've been living with that electricity grid that was formed so many years ago. We really haven't had any real technology change that has happened. And the power, the electricity that goes into the grid has been coming really from fossil fuel sources, mostly coal, some oil, gas, etc. And this has now caused a situation where carbon emissions have abounded, and we are now staring at very massive climate change issues at this point in time. And so, really, we have to think about our whole future very differently. And the news is positive in that because of technology changes that are happening around us, therefore we have the ability of essentially having this energy transition totally change the mix of fuel that is going into the electricity grid at this point in time. And so because renewable energy is clean, does not cause carbon emissions. Therefore, we have the ability through this energy transition of addressing also the climate change problem. In addition, just given the technology developments that are happening, renewable energy is actually a lot cheaper than the traditional sources, the fossil fuel sources of generating power. So there is that additional benefit as well. Now, in terms of what we need to do to address this whole issue and make sure that the energy transition happens much faster rather than more slowly, because frankly, we don't have time to deal with the whole issue of carbon emissions and climate change. The clock really is ticking and we have very limited time. And so we have to find ways of hastening and speeding up this transition. So, what are the steps that we can take? Number one, we can really speed up the rollout of renewable energy systems. And today, globally, it's maybe about 8 to 10% in the total power generation. That number has to go up very substantially. So, that's number one. Number two, grid management has to be improved dramatically because renewable energy is intermittent, is variable, and therefore grids have to learn how to take in this renewable energy and essentially make sure that consumers on the other side see stable power generation. And that is doable now given technology evolution, especially on the storage side. The third thing we have to do is that uh, electricity accounts for about 30% of carbon emissions. Mobility, electric vehicles and so on, accounts for about 20%. And we have to therefore move the mobility sector as rapidly as possible also towards the electric side, away from fossil fuels, because that also accounts for a very significant aspect of um, the carbon emissions that are going on. The third thing is that there are many sectors in the world which are called the hard to abate sectors, where corporates really use up a lot of energy for making steel or cement or other manufacturing areas. Those sectors can also now be tackled again through solar, through clean energy sources, and therefore we have to make sure that we address the issue of these so-called hard to abate sectors. In India specifically, we also need to address the whole area of the distribution companies because they are a very big part of the power value chain. And unless that part of the value chain is fixed, a lot of the other things that we're talking about doing at the back end of the supply of the power value chain will not work. So in India specifically, the distribution sector really has to undergo very significant and fundamental structural reform, so that we can actually have a more efficient sector in general. Uh, to back up all of these issues and to make sure that change is happening in all of these areas in the right way, sitting right at the top is policy making from the government. And that then is very fundamental to making sure that all of these different steps that I outlined get taken in the right manner. Now, policy making is really challenged or is under pressure right now simply because of the rapid technology changes that are taking place. And therefore, policymakers really need to be very almost nifty and speedy and very accurate in their decision making because the decisions that we make today in the face of rapid technology changes, these decisions will get locked in for the next 25 or 30 years. and will be hard to change as we go forward. And so therefore, policy making has a very, very crucial role to play in this rapidly changing evolutionary technology environment. So I think that is the other aspect that really needs to be looked at very carefully. And then, of course, there are other areas like energy efficiency that we need to really speed up on. We need to make sure that the overall public awareness on these kinds of areas is also improved. So there are a lot of things that we need to do to essentially make sure that India follows a more carbon light playbook and grows in a way that other countries in the world have not followed so far. Every country in the world so far has developed on the basis of a carbon intensive development paradigm. India has to develop its own carbon light development paradigm. And so this is going to be a unique in the annals of the history of the evolution of countries. But then once we do that, and once we've developed this carbon light playbook, as I call it will then become the way for a lot of other developing countries to come down the same path as India. And therefore, India has this incredible opportunity of being the beacon for a totally new way of development, which I would call is a carbon light way of development, and really taking the world down a very different path. And so that is really what I talk about in the book. And that is really in some ways, the very exciting sort of point in the evolution of energy that we find ourselves in right now. So it's very exciting, actually. No, as I said earlier, government policy making is absolutely critical in really hastening the transition towards a carbon-free future. So, in terms of the sectors that you talked about, and let me just mention them in some more detail. The first thing is we need to have more clean energy getting generated. So that's the first basic requirement that we have. So we need more solar, we need more wind. We need a grid that is actually able to absorb all this new renewable energy that is going to be coming in. So that is the first step that we require. And since the buyers of this power in India today are the distribution utilities have to be reformed because they're actually in bad shape right now. The financial health is poor, their operating parameters are not healthy, and so therefore the whole distribution sector has to be reformed. And in this, let me say that it is not just the central government that is involved, because as you know, in India, power or electricity is a concurrent subject. And so therefore both the central and the state governments have to basically come in and resolve or help resolve, work together and help resolve the whole situation. So if you look at the overall architecture of the electricity sector in India, you have a central regulator, you have state regulators, you have the utilities at the state level owned by the state governments, you have some of the generating companies at the center owned like NTPC and so on, owned by the central government. You have a central grid and you have a state grid. So it's a fairly complex overall structure. And so therefore, the ability of the states and the center to work with each other is absolutely critical in making sure that we come up with the right solutions. So having said that, and having talked about renewable energy generation as being in some ways the first basic precondition, because if you don't have more clean energy being generated, you can't really use it in various other areas. So that is number one. The second thing is, if you look at the usage sectors, right? What are those usage sectors? As I said, one is mobility. So we have to really make sure that the move towards electric mobility gains a lot more momentum. Today we have mostly a lot of two-wheelers and three-wheelers. We have some public transportation that is on electric mobility. We have to make sure that all public transportation, whether it's buses, fleets of buses, whether it's rapid transportation systems like metros and so on, all of that has to become much, much bigger. And then we have to take the commercial transportation, which is trucks and so on, and electric vehicles, and make sure that we set specific targets for those. So let's say by 2030, 30 or 40% of all incremental sales of vehicles have to become electric. And by 2040, let's say 30% of the overall fleet or 40% of the fleet whatever be the targets, so the government needs to work out those numbers and set those specific targets. So that's the second thing that needs to happen. The third thing is that industries are big consumers of energy as well. So those industrial sectors have to also be charged a price for carbon. They have to feel the pain of emitting carbon into the atmosphere. And if that is done, that will then become a bit of a catalyst for the industrial sectors also to start looking at clean energy. They can they can buy directly solar energy through the grid. They can set up their own solar plants. They can also set up wind farms. So that will then make sure that there is a much broader convergence of people wanting to buy renewable energy, and that will therefore have more renewables coming out of the system. The bottom line is, however, the following: that today energy accounts for 70% of electricity of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. Of that, electricity accounts for about half. So we need to not only increase within that half the amount of clean energy that is generated, but we also have to make sure that in the balance 50% of energy consumption that happens, which is the industrial sector, heating applications, and so on, there and mobility, there also we basically try to move towards cleaner sources of energy. And so at some point, 5 years, 6 years down the road, hydrogen will become a very big opportunity as well. So we need to start already pilot testing those areas. And lastly, you talked about storage. Storage is in fact very, very critical. It will really hasten the usage and the adoption of renewable energy into the grid. So that is something that absolutely and definitely must be supported. The last thing I would say, as far as government action and policy is concerned, is that today in renewable energy, the value addition is 70% of the equipment and 30% in the project execution. In wind, 70% of that equipment, 70% is entirely manufactured in India. So all the value chain sits in India. But in solar, that 70% of the equipment, most of that is imported from China. So we need to make sure that we have the appropriate manufacturing incentives and systems built in for India to encourage Indian manufacturing, so that not only can we convert our end users into clean sources of energy, but we can also manufacture a lot of this equipment in India, and then not just use it in India, but also potentially export it, and thereby become a leader in the entire gamut, the entire value chain of renewable energy. So I think that's really the areas that the government can step in. We need to move fast, however, because time is passing. Our competitors globally are not stopping. They are moving very, very rapidly. And so therefore, we have to move forward at great pace and great speed if we want to capture this opportunity, which is really in some ways rising in front of our eyes. I think there is going to be enormous growth, and I'll tell you why. If you look at India's current power consumption, we consume in electricity 1.4 trillion units a year, which means that on a per capita basis, our consumption of electricity is a quarter of the global average. It's very, very low. It has to improve. And as we develop, it will improve. And the expectation is that our electricity demand will grow at about 5 to 6% every year for the next many years. At that growth rate, we will essentially be doubling our power demand in the next 12 to 14 years. And as we double and we create another 1.4 trillion units of additional demand in the next 12 to 14 years, the question is, where is that supply going to come from? Is it going to come from coal? Is it going to come from hydro or gas or nuclear? Or will it come from renewables? Now, the interesting thing is that today renewables has by far and away become the cheapest form of energy generation in India. It is cheaper than gas, cheaper than nuclear, cheaper than hydro, and certainly cheaper than coal as well, without even counting the externality cost of carbon within coal that is embedded in coal, right? Renewable energy today is 30 to 50% cheaper than coal on a pure generation to generation basis. And this is phenomenal news for us. So what that means is that as we look at the next 1.4 trillion units of demand, even though of the existing 1.4 trillion units, two-thirds of that has come from coal, of the next 1.4 trillion units, the reality is that two-thirds of that will come from renewables. And so the whole power sector is just going to flip around. And from being fundamentally a sector that relies on coal, we will become a sector that relies on renewable energy for its future capacity addition. And therefore, the issue is not where are we going to get to in terms of capacity. The question is how much can we execute? Because the market demand is there. But we need to actually execute these projects on the ground. We need to raise capital. There's a lot of work to be done. The government has set a target of by 2030 to have 450 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity installed and running at that point in time. Today, that number is 90 gigawatts. Today, the entire installed capacity of the power sector in India is 370 gigawatts. To meet the target of 450, we have to, as a country, install in India, in renewable energy only, 360 gigawatts of additional capacity in the next 10 years, just in renewable energy. And keep in mind that the current installed capacity from all sources, from the dawn of India's history, is 370 gigawatts. So we're talking about recreating the entire Indian power sector only in renewable energy in the next 10 years. That's an awesome task. It's gigantic, it's huge. There will be a lot of problems in executing this target, but the bottom line is that the growth opportunity is going to be tremendous. It is something that as a country we have to do, because we cannot have a situation where we do not provide affordable, clean energy to our people, that we lack power for growth. So we have to make this power available, and it has to be done from clean sources. It cannot be done through coal. And the reality is that even if we meet the 450 gigawatt target, we will still need more coal-based power as well. And so therefore, while we are on the right path, we just have to do more. But I would say that the opportunity for rolling out in renewables is really very sizable and very significant. Look, we are very far away from net zero, globally, even in the Western world, and certainly even more so in India. You see, as every country grows, you keep increasing your carbon emissions. And as your level of growth reaches a certain point, your carbon emissions the growth begins to taper off. So globally, most countries in the Western world are at a point where their growth of emissions has tapered off, and the growth is beginning to fall, or is becoming negative, but carbon emissions are still positive. So for these countries to reach net zero emissions, we are still, I would say, at least 10 to 20 years away from that point, if not more, right? India, on the other hand, is at a point where our carbon emissions is just growing at this point in time because of the development paradigm that we are on. And it's not dissimilar to what every other country has followed. So I think that, the first question to ask in India's case is, when are we going to get to a point where we will have zero carbon emissions growth? Once we've got to zero carbon emissions growth, then we will start having a situation where once your growth becomes negative, and then it gets to a point where we actually get to zero. So let's assume that if this is the way the curve goes, we are still in the upward trajectory of the curve, where the Western world has got to a point where it's flat to a little bit down. So I think it's going to take us many years before we get to net zero. I don't even think it's something that we should be talking about in the Indian context. But yes, we should certainly be talking about it in the context of the Western world, because as we all know, it is the Western world, through their fossil fuel-based growth dependency, is what has put in the most amount of carbon into the atmosphere. And so I would say there is a higher degree of onus on them to essentially make sure that they get to net zero first. I think India has maybe 50 to 60 years before we get to net zero. But an important aspect of getting to net zero, by the way, is the issue of carbon capture technologies. And today, carbon capture technologies are very expensive. Hopefully, over time, they will become cheaper. As they become cheaper, then potentially you can have business models that develop around them. And then you can potentially, instead of getting there in 50 to 60 years, as might have happened in India's case in the normal course, maybe you can get there faster. And so, therefore, I would really bank on technology to help us get to these to net zero a lot faster than might be the case otherwise. Look, I think the International Solar Alliance is a phenomenal initiative on the part of the government of India. It is, as we know, the brainchild of the Prime Minister. And I must say that the Prime Minister has been really visionary in the area of renewable energy and in really getting to grips with understanding and getting ahead of the curve compared to most other countries in the world on the whole issue of climate change and moving India towards renewable energy very rapidly. So I must really commend the leadership of the Prime Minister in this regard. And I think, therefore, the ISA, which he conceived or which was conceived by the government as being a body that encourages the installation of solar across the world, especially in a lot of developing countries that are further behind India on this path, I think is a very sensible, very good idea. And I think the ISA can play a very important role in making sure that we don't just have cheaper sources of solar, not just in India, but everywhere in the world, but also that we're able to find ways of getting this cheaper solar power to eventually the end individual. And I think while a lot of what I've talked about is at the aggregate level, ultimately we have to, there are a lot of applications at the individual level as well. Things like, burning, cooking food at home, which, using biomass and so on, which also causes a lot of pollution, also leads to health issues and so on. Uh, Providing light to people in rural areas where it is not available otherwise because either the grid has not got there or will never get there because of the cost. So I think in a lot of those kinds of use cases, I think the ISA can also play a very critical role. And therefore, I think both at the aggregate level that I talked about earlier, as well as at the individual level, the ISA has a very important role to play to interact with governments and help them with putting in place the right policy systems, channelizing through global capital markets more capital into some of these areas, and also making sure that technology transfer happens in a much better manner, and that the learnings of policy making in certain countries can be transferred more easily to other countries. So I think the ISA is going to be a real catalyst in some ways solarizing the world, and therefore it's a very critical role that the ISA can play. The issue about the one world, one sun, one grid concept, I think is also really good. Ultimately the sun is shining at somewhere in the world, and if we can have a grid that is able to move power around more seamlessly, then that perhaps allows us to have a situation where the amount of solar in the grid can actually improve dramatically, because then you don't have a situation where you're only dependent on solar, which, as we all know, comes in the middle of the day and then goes away. If you can then start importing solar energy from other parts of the world or from other countries around you, then you can actually have a situation where you are not dependent on that peak. You can actually then extend your peak out by getting solar power from other countries. So I think that it's a very worthwhile endeavor, and I think we must definitely examine it to see how it can become technically viable and what the cost of moving this solar power would be. So I think it's something that we must definitely look at very seriously. And if nothing else, if we can improve grid utilization by moving power across different countries, that itself I think will be a big advantage, because it can bring down the cost of transmission networks very significantly then. there are many learnings I've had as an entrepreneur, but the biggest learning is that if you're successful, and it's not that every entrepreneur is successful, you need to have a little bit of luck, a lot of effort, and a lot of hard work. Um, is that it's immensely enjoyable and it's immensely rewarding. And our sector, the overall clean energy sector, is a sector where there are tremendous changes taking place. And as I said earlier, this is a once in a generation, or even more, once in a 2 or 3 generation kind of emergence of a new sector. There is fantastic technology development that is happening all around us, um, and the market is immense. And not only is it an immense market, but you are doing something that is good for society, and that is good for humanity at large. And so, therefore, irrespective of whether you make money or not, that almost doesn't matter. I think as long as you can do good for society, I think that itself is reward enough. And I think in our sector, that is eminently possible. So I would really encourage every young person or not so young person um, who has the entrepreneurship bug in them somewhere, um, to really take the plunge, to get involved, whether it's on the technology side, whether it's on the application side, whether it's on the financing side, whether it's on the policy making side, even get involved. Get involved in our sector. It's a very critical sector, and we absolutely have to make sure that as a nation and as a race, we are successful in this endeavor to reduce carbon emissions. I'll just give you a last statistic. Uh, to prevent the 2 degrees centigrade climate change, we essentially cannot afford to have more than 800 gigatons of carbon in the atmosphere. Today, we already have 600 gigatons in the atmosphere of carbon, which means we only have 200 gigatons of budget left that we can exhaust if we are to stay below 2 degrees centigrade. And keep in mind that these are not exact numbers. It could be less than 800, it could be 750. In fact, some people say that 1.5 degrees centigrade is what is required. And to get to that level, we can't exceed 750 gigatons. Now, how much carbon are we emitting every year? We are emitting 10 to 12 gigatons of carbon every year into the atmosphere, which means that to cross 800 gigatons will take us a scarce 15 to 20 years. At that point, we would have crossed 800 gigatons. We would have crossed 2 degrees centigrade of temperature increase. And the reality is that if you add up all the commitments that have been made by various countries under the Paris Climate Accord, we're actually on track to achieve 3.5 degrees centigrade climate change or temperature increase. And that is going to lead to catastrophic changes in the environment around us. It is going to lead to large-scale extinctions of species. This is the causality that we are creating in the world around us. It's not something good. And keep in mind that while our generation does not have to deal with it, it is our children and their children that will have to deal with the consequences of all of this. So is this the kind of world that we want to bequeath to our children, where they are dealing with the consequences of climate change? And we've seen some of the implications of that. I don't think we want to do that. And therefore, I think all of us in some way, shape or form have a duty and an obligation to get involved, to make the change happen ourselves. And if we can do that by becoming entrepreneurs in our sector and somehow finding ways to decrease carbon emissions, then by all means, I would say, please do it. Get involved and don't sit on the sidelines. This is too important an issue.